I fell for my ski instructor, but he holds a dark secret. Do you ever stop whining, Micah? I snapped, my grip tightening on the wheel as I sped around the icy bend. Sorry for not drooling over some cold hills, he muttered, not even looking up from his phone. Cold hills. This is St. Maurizio. They call this place the ski resort on top of the world. People would kill to be here. I shot back, my voice sharper than I meant. Yeah, more like the top of my nerves, Micah muttered, brushing off my enthusiasm, like the fresh powder lingering the slopes. To him, this was just another vacation. This trip was a culmination of years of dreaming. For 27 years, I had one bucket list wish, to learn how to ski, and not just anywhere. At a resort as glamorous as this. Growing up in a middle-class family meant my dreams weren't handed to me. They were earned. I worked relentlessly. First as a barman and a waiter, then slowly climbing the professional ladder. I graduated from marketing school and started working as a junior marketing assistant and went up owning my own agency. Every long hour, every sacrifice led to this moment, finally booking my dream trip. Micah, though, was the complete opposite. Born into wealth, he was used to a life of luxury and pampering. Over time, he'd grown so accustomed to this lifestyle that little seemed to really excite him anymore. Yet, despite his spoiled exterior and occasional snobbishness, Micah was my best friend, the one person who never looked down on me. Even when I had nothing, he listened when I needed him most and stood by me through twist and turn. Beneath his demeanor, he had a heart of gold. Cheer up, Mr. Moody, I teased, holding the door open. We're here for a whole month. If you keep that attitude, we're definitely not going to have a good time. Yeah, Micah grumbled, dragging his skis towards the hotel. And they didn't even send anyone to help with our luggage. Rolling my eyes, I grabbed half the bags from him. I'll do it, you big baby. Inside, the reception handed us our keys, and as soon as I stepped into our room, a wave of orange-scented freshness hit me. The space was a perfect mix of cozy and luxury. Leather sofas, dapped with a fuzzy blanket, a sleek marble floor, and so much room it felt indulgent. I could get used to this, I said, flopping onto the first bed, which almost sent me tumbling off the edge. Micah smirked, leaning casually against the doorframe. If you're this excited now, wait until you see what I've set up for you. He stretched out his hand, signaling me to follow him. What is it? I barely contained my curiosity. He chuckled. Straight to the point, huh? Fine. I hired the best private ski tutor for you. 1 whole month of lessons so you won't be bugging me every 5 minutes to help you. Before he could finish, I tackled him into a hug. Thank you a million times, Micah. When do I start? Right now, if you're ready. He stepped back, handing me my gear and a card with a tutor's name. Ask for Elijah at the reception. They'll handle the rest. Meanwhile, I'm off to enjoy a much more relaxing day. Grabbing my equipment, I practically flew out of the room, shouting one last, "You're the best!" over my shoulder. The reception greeted me with a warm smile and led me straight to the ski area, where my new instructor would be waiting. My excitement was through the roof. "You must be Zayn," a voice greeted me, accompanied by a quick handshake. I looked up at who I assumed was Elijah, though it was hard to tell beneath what seemed like 5 layers of clothing. He towered over me, and a crisp winter air carried the subtle, rich scent of his cologne. With a smile, I replied, "That's me, and you must be Elijah. Pleasure to meet you. Is that a Mont Blanc Explorer you're wearing?" He pulled down a scarf, revealing a sharp jawline and a grin that reaches his ears. "Ah, a cologne connoisseur. I like you already." I chuckled lightly. I just appreciate the finer things. His smile wider. "The weather's perfect today, and we still have some daylight. Ready to get started?" "Absolutely," I said, my excitement barely contained. We started with the basics. Elijah patiently showed me how to hold my ski poles properly, explaining everything in the simplest terms. almost like he was teaching a 6th grader, not a 27-year-old man. Finally, we moved on to the real fun, the slopes. It was a small, beginner-friendly hill, but my feet trembled with a mix of excitement and nerves. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, his firm grip on my shoulder steadying me. "I'm ready. I'm ready to conquer the mountain," I shouted, my confidence drawing a laugh from him. I began slowly, weaving from one side of the track to the other. A few times, I nearly wiped out, but Elijah's strong hands were always there to catch me before I hit the snow. "I think you did enough for today." "You did great," he said, brushing off the snowflakes clinging to my goggles. "Okay. Yeah," I mumbled, realizing the sun had set. "You must be freezing. Let's head back to the hotel. I'm calling it a day too." As the wind picked up, Elijah helped me to my gear, since my frozen fingers made everything harder. I felt like a kid under his watchful care, with him as my parental guardian. We stepped into the hotel. The warm air hit us like a wave, and we immediately began shedding layers. Elijah removed his goggles, hat, scarf, and heavy jacket, and for the first time, I got a proper look at him. He was tall and well built, with a fiery ginger hair, a neatly trimmed mustache, and striking blue eyes that seemed to glimmer in the light. I was mesmerized, staring at him like an idiot until I snapped out of it. I fumbled with my gear. I caught him glancing at me too, a flicker of interest in his gaze. "So, Zayn," he said, breaking the silence. "How was your first time skiing?" "Honestly, amazing," I replied with a grin. "You're a great teacher, and this place is incredible." "Glad to hear it." He looked around the hallway for a moment before pointing to a narrow door. "There's a cozy little cafe in there. They have the best hot chocolate. Join me later if you're up for it." My jaw practically hit the floor. A hot ski instructor was inviting me to hang out. Was this just casual or something? "Let me grab a quick shower," I managed to say, "and I'll meet you there." I nodded and headed back to my room, quickly showering and freshening up. Micah was still nowhere to be found, probably off exploring on his own. Without wasting much time, I made my way to the door Elijah had pointed out. The cafe was warm and inviting, with soft light and the scent of rich cocoa lingering in the air. Elijah was already seated in the corner, now dressed in casual clothes that made him look even more effortlessly handsome. How did he manage to get here before me? I slid into the seat across from him, signaling the waiter for the same drink as Elijah was having. "Waiting for more company?" I teased. A playful grin tugged at my lip. "Oh, no," Elijah replied smoothly, mirroring my grin. "Just my student. I always treat them to one hot chocolate. It's kind of my little tradition, a gesture of hospitality. Your friend Micah hired me for a whole month to teach you, which I have to say is quite generous of him." "Great." So this was just a part of his routine, a perk for all of his students. I bit back the sting of disappointment, reminding myself not to get carried away. "So," Elijah said, leaning back in his chair, his blue eyes fixed on me, "what do you do in life, Zayn?" I hesitated, suddenly self-conscious. "If I tell you, you're not going to laugh." "I swear I won't," he promised, leaning forward with a curious expression. I smirked. "I run a small marketing agency." "That's impressive," he said, genuinely intrigued. Why would I laugh at that? It's not where I started, I admitted, my voice softening. I worked all kinds of odd jobs, bartending, cleaning, you name it, just to get where I am now. Elijah's expression shifted. What made you want to learn to ski so badly? You're clearly someone who puts their heart into everything they do. I swallowed hard, his words striking a nerve. It's personal, my voice flattering slightly, but the way he looked at me, open, patient, made me feel safe to continue. When I was younger, my dad always talked about teaching me how to ski. He planned a big winter trip for us one year. I paused, the memory still tender. He died in a car accident before it happened. I guess the part of me always wanted to fulfill that wish for him and myself. Elijah was quiet for a moment, his expression unreadable. When he finally spoke, His voice was low and sincere. "That's incredible, Zayn. Not the loss, of course, but the way you fought to make something of your life, to honor his memory. I don't think I've ever met someone with your kind of determination." "Well," I said, breaking the tension with a nervous laugh, "it's not exactly conquering the slopes just yet, but I'll get there." Elijah's lips curved into a slow smile, his eyes flickering with something I couldn't quite place. "I have no doubt you will. You're not the type to back down from a challenge." We spent hours talking, our conversation flowing effortlessly, from one topic to another. I've always been an extrovert type, someone who can fill silence with stories. Elijah, on the other hand, was more reserved, dodging most of my questions about his personal life. He kept the focus on me, which was flattering, but it left me wondering what he was holding back. Maybe he was just trying to keep things professional. I didn't want to push him past that boundary. Before I realized it, the bartender was announcing the last call, and the clock struck 1 a.m. "Oh crap," I blurted out, suddenly remembering. Micah's probably worried sick. Elijah stood up immediately, faster than I could finish the thought. "You're right. It's late. I'll see you tomorrow, bright and early, Zayn. Have a good night." And just like that, he was gone, bolting out of the cafe so quick, it left me blinking in surprise. Was he feeling guilty for keeping me out so long? Or was there something else on his mind? I made my way back to the room, treading lightly to avoid waking Micah, though it turned out I didn't need to worry. He was lying flat across the bed, fully dressed, snoring softly. The room was filled with a faint scent of oranges mixed with champagne. 10 days later, my skiing skills have improved dramatically. Elijah and I trained twice a day, every day, and it felt like I was finally getting the hang of it. Despite his claims that the chocolate was a one-time tradition for his students, Elijah invited me for one every night. I couldn't help but wonder why. Feeling more confident, I even introduced him to Micah, who joined us for a run on the slopes. "What do you do, Micah?" Elijah asked casually, as we rode up the ski lift to the bigger mountain. "I own an oil company," Micah said with a smug grin. "The business is thriving." "You've always been a businessman, Micah," I teased, rolling my eyes as the lift came to a stop. The days flew by as we burned through our energy skiing, laughing, and challenging each other. By the time we made it back down, we were thoroughly exhausted. "Thanks for the great time, boys," Micah said, clapping both of us on the shoulder. "I need to go get ready. This guy has a date tonight." Micah sauntered off to the hotel, leaving Elijah and me alone. Elijah turned to me, a sly smile on his face. "Funny how you're still not putting yourself out there with a girl." I chuckled nervously, deciding to take a chance. I'd rather take a date with a guy than a girl, honestly. The words hung in the air, and an awkward silence settled between us. Elijah didn't say anything. I started to regret my boldness. I cleared my throat, trying to break the tension. "So, same time, same place tonight?" I asked, gesturing towards the cafe. Elijah shook his head, a playful glint in his eye. "I've got a better idea." He started walking toward the hotel, but turned his back to face me. "How about a night skiing session? Like a date night?" I gasped, caught completely off guard. Elijah stopped in his tracks, looking flustered. "Sorry," I thought. No, I interrupted with a laugh. "You thought right. You surprised me. See you at 9? "Perfect. And wear something warm," he added with a wink before disappearing into the crowd of skiers heading toward the hotel. I stood there, grinning like an idiot. Well, I guess my luck has turned, I thought. A date with a hot ski instructor? Not bad at all. The night crept in, and my nerves were firing like fireworks. Meeting Elijah in front of the hotel, I assumed we'd head to our usual hill. But before I could take a step, his hand gently landed on my shoulder, sending a jolt of warmth down my spine. "Oh no," he said with a smirk. "I have something better in mind. Follow me." Intrigued, I trailed after him to a secluded hill. It wasn't as steep as I thought, but was high enough to promise an exhilarating ride. "Why is no one here?" I asked as we boarded the ski lift. I reserved it just for us tonight, Elijah replied, his voice calm. Thought it'd be better without distractions. My cheeks flushed. That thoughtful. Thanks. He sat beside me, close enough for his warmth to brush against me, despite the chill. After a moment of silence, he turned to me with a serious expression. Zayn, if you had to do something bad for the greater good, would you? The question caught me off guard. Depends on what it is, I stammered. I wouldn't kill anyone, obviously, but if it was something important, yeah, I guess I could. Sometimes you have to make the hard choice for the right reason. Elijah nodded. I like your boldness. You inspire me, you know that? Before I could respond, the lift stopped, and he gestured for me to step out. Come on, this trail's straightforward, but the commas can get slippery, and there aren't any safety net. Keep to the center, okay? I swallowed hard, nodding. I didn't want him to see how nervous I was. We started down the slope, Elijah staying close and offering encouragement. But soon, my competitive streak got the better of me. I launched myself forward, the rush of speed intoxicating. Easy there, Schumacher, he called out. But I didn't slow down. I wanted to impress him, to show him I could handle this. The snow glittered under the dim light, and the sky above was a breathtaking shade of deep purple, sprinkled with countless stars. I couldn't resist looking up, enchanted, until I felt my skis slipping towards the edge. Panic surged through me. I was going too fast, the edge of the slope drawing nearer. In desperation, I threw myself onto the ground, hoping it would stop the fall. A sharp pain shot through my side as I skidded, tumbling towards a small forest and the sheer cliff beyond. The world blurred, and for a terrifying moment, I thought this was it. Grab me! A voice shouted just as I reached the edge. Two strong hands gripped mine, pulling me back with a force that left us both lying on the ground, gasping for air. When I finally caught my breath, I turned to Elijah beside me, still clutching my hand. He was shaking, his face pale. You moron! He yelled, his voice trembling. I told you to slow down. Instead you played daredevil, you could have died. Despite the ache in my side, I laughed softly, more from relief than anything else. Elijah wasn't amused. You stared at the sky like a deer in the headlights. Are you insane? How did you even get to me so fast? I asked, genuinely amazed. I'm the best for a reason, he said. But that's not it. No more big slopes for you. I'm keeping you on the bunny hill for now. I could have lost you. The raw emotion in his voice hit me like a tidal wave. Adrenaline coursing through me. I reached out and pulled him closer, sealing the moment with a kiss. Elijah leaned in, his lips warm against mine, the intensity sending sparks through my entire body. I took off my gloves, wanting to feel him, his hair, his face, his hands gripping me tightly. He pressed me into the snow, the cliff only feet away, but utterly forgotten. Want to continue this in my room? He whispered, his breath warm against my ear. I smiled, my pulse racing. I'd love to. Next morning, I headed back to my room to change my clothes and a quick trip to the pharmacy. Only now I noticed the sharp ache in my left side. It seemed Elijah's touch, his kisses, and the heat of last night had suppressed the pain until now. As I buttoned my shirt, my fingers lingered over the place where his hand had been, tracing the ghost of his touch. I could still feel him, the weight of his body against mine, the fire in his kisses. My mind drifted, replaying the memory and longing for the moment like that again. When I woke up in his bed earlier, he'd already gone, but a small card on the counter caught my eye. Have a nice day. The simplicity of it made me smile. Micah wasn't in the room early. Micah wasn't in our room either, which was odd. He wasn't the one to wake up early, especially on vacation. Shrugging it off, I headed out for medicine. Today was going to be a rest day, something I hadn't allowed myself since arriving here. I strolled towards the pharmacy, humming a soft tune. I spotted Micah in the distance. His pacing was frantic, his hands raking through his hair. Something was wrong. Hey, what's going on? I called out as I approached him. His face was a storm of anxiety, his eyes darting everywhere. Where have you been? He snapped, grabbing my arms, but then releasing me just as quickly. Never mind. Doesn't matter. I'm in trouble. I need to go. I need... His words tumbled over each other, disjointed and frantic. Micah, slow down, I said, gripping his shoulder firmly. What's happening? His nervous energy spilled over into a full-blown panic. Someone's blackmailing me, okay? They're demanding $200,000. If they don't pay it, they'll expose me. I blinked, trying to process his words. Blackmail? Expose him? What was he thinking about? Who's blackmailing you? I pressed. Do you know them? And what could they possibly expose? His hands threw up in frustration. Forget it. I'll handle it myself. No, I said firmly, grabbing his hand before he could walk away. Micah, wait. You're clearly not thinking straight. Let me help you. We can figure this out together. His shoulders sagged as the tension started to leave his body. He looked at me, his eyes glistening with unshedded tears. You don't understand, he whispered. It's already too late. Too late for what? I asked, my tone softening. Micah took a deep breath, his voice trembling as he spoke. I already sent the money, he admitted, his hands slipping from mine. A full $200,000. They gave me a deadline, and I panicked. I wired it to them last night. I stared at him, stunned for a moment, before pulling him into a hug. Micah, you should have told me, I murmured. But what's done is done. We'll figure out what to do next. I promise. Micah clung to me like a lifeline. I don't know who else to turn to. I'm sorry. I pulled back and looked him in the eyes. You don't have to apologize. We'll get through this. We'll start from the beginning, and we will get your money back. I dedicate more of my time to Micah than skiing now. My friend needed me, and I wanted to be there for him. We dug deep into the situation, piecing together what little information we could find. The location of the blackmailer was barely traceable. Whoever this was skilled, experienced, and clearly had a history of extortion and blackmail. At first, Micah was hesitant to show me the conversation with the blackmailer. It's too humiliating, he muttered, avoiding my eyes. But after some coaxing, he admitted something even stranger. The messages. They disappeared after I read them. Like, gone for good. That's the part of what makes this so weird. Micah was about to give up, saying that this sum was nothing more than pocket change to his company. Luckily, I knew a guy who was hacked once, and I knew who he called to solve the situation. I located a specialist. The only catch, it would take him 3 days to arrive and begin the work. Exhausted, but relieved at the small breakthrough, I stepped out for some fresh air. That's when Elijah appeared, his voice soft and concerned. Hey, sunshine, he greeted, falling into step beside me. Hey, I said, surprised but happy to see him. You haven't shown up for your training lessons for a while. Is it something I did? His expression was a mix of worry and curiosity. I shook my head quickly. No, not at all. My friend's been going through a real tough time, and I want to be there for him. I reached for his hand instinctively, but we can still grab a hot chocolate, I added with a small smile. Elijah laughed softly, the tension in his shoulder easing. Hot chocolate it is. Let's go. As we sat at a small corner table, the rich aroma of chocolate surrounded us. Elijah stirred his drink aggressively before finally breaking the silence. I've been thinking about us, he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. I know we haven't had much time together recently, but I need to say it. I have strong feelings for you. And I don't mean a passing crush. I want to see where this could go. I blinked, caught off guard by the sincerity in his words. My cheeks warmed, but from the vulnerability in his eyes. Elijah, I started, meeting his gaze. I feel the same way. I really do. But right now, things are complicated with Micah. And before I could finish, he reached across the table, taking my hand in his. I get it, he said. You're an amazing friend, and that's one of the things I admire most about you. But when this situation calms down, I'd love for us to take the next step. If you're ready, of course." His words filled my chest with warmth. I smiled and stood and leaned across the table, cutting him off with a kiss. It was soft, reassuring, and filled with promise. When I pulled back, his surprised smile mirrored mine. "When things settle," I said, my voice firm yet gentle, "we'll talk for now. Let this be enough." I attended 2 more classes with Elijah. They were short but sweet, but the lingering pain in my left side kept me from performing at my best. Still, being around him made the session worth it, even if I couldn't give it my all. When I returned to the room, Micah was waiting for me. His face was tense, his energy almost vibrating with urgency. "You're not going to believe this," he said, his voice sharp. I raised an eyebrow, trying to play cool. "I always miss the good parts, don't I?" But Micah's expression didn't shift. It only grew more serious. "Your guy was here," he said. And then his voice dropped to a near growl. "And he damn well did it. We found the culprit, and he's in this resort." A wave of dizziness swept over me, my knees threatening to buckle. "What are you saying?" I stammered through deep down. I feared I already knew the answer. Micah's hands tightened into a fist. "It's your darling instructor." "No." I took a step back, shaking my head. "No, that's not possible. You're wrong." Micah's eyes softened briefly, but his tone stayed firm. "I'm sorry, but the proof is there. My team will handle it. But I wanted you to know before things went down." I could barely hear him over the rush of blood in my ears. "You're wrong," I whispered again. But even as I said it, my voice cracked. Micah put his hand on my shoulder, his grip grounding yet insistent. "I know you're sweet on him, but I gotta do what's right. This isn't just about me. It's about stopping someone who's willing to hurt others to get what they want." "No!" I snapped, pulling away from him. "No. Give me a chance to talk to him." "Zay," Micah started, but I was already storming out of the room, anger and disbelief driving my every step. I banged on Elijah's door with all the force of my trembling hand could muster. My knuckles stung from the impact, but it didn't stop until the door finally opened. Elijah stood there, his face a mixture of surprise and concern. "Zayn?" I didn't wait for an invitation. I pushed past him, my words spilling out in a torrent. "Why, Elijah? Why would you blackmail Micah?" His face darkened with confusion, then frustration. "What are you talking about? I didn't blackmail anyone. Micah has proof," I shot back, my voice shaking with a mixture of fury and heartbreak. "Don't you dare lie to me. He knows it's you. He found out everything." Elijah froze, his shoulders sagging. As he exhaled a long, defeated breath, his hand ran through his hair. And when his eyes finally met mine, there was no denial left in them. "Okay," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're right. I could barely breathe. The man I thought I knew, even if it had only been for a few weeks, was now revealed to be a criminal." My chest felt tight, my stomach churned, and I turned to leave, the weight of the revelation crushing me. But just as I reached the door, Elijah's voice stopped me. "Did Micah show you our message?" he asked, his tone steady, but still filled with implication. I froze mid-step, my thoughts racing. Micah had been strangely evasive about those messages. Slowly I turned back, my curiosity overriding my urge to leave. "What messages?" I asked, narrowing my eyes. Elijah didn't hesitate, grabbing his laptop from the nearby table, opened it, and turned the screen towards me. "Here," he said, gesturing for me to look. On the screen were screenshots, emails, and logs. As I skimmed through them, my heart sank. Elijah had uncovered something else entirely. Micah didn't own an oil company, as he had once claimed. Instead, he'd been selling illegal goods on the black market, earning hundreds of thousands of dollars in secret. "You see, Zayn?" Elijah said, his voice calm but resolute. "I investigate everyone who comes to this resort. Rich entitled pricks with skeletons in their closet, who think they can get away with anything. Micah wasn't an exception. Turns out he was deeply involved in things that most people wouldn't even dare to imagine. I stared at the screen, stunned and overwhelmed. So, this is why you blackmailed him? Elijah nodded, sitting down on the sofa and leaning back. I only target people with corrupt or illegal backgrounds, people from whom this kind of money is pocket change, but who needs a wake-up call. Drug dealers, gang members, traffickers. Micah fits the bill. And you just casually figure all of this out? How? He gave a bitter chuckle. Ski instructors are like bartenders. People who tell us everything thinking it's harmless small talk. Combine that with a little research, and you'd be amazed at what you can learn. I took a step closer, my voice trembling. But why? Why are you doing this? Elijah's face darkened. Because I don't have a choice, he admitted. My mom's terminally ill, cancer. The treatment costs more than I could ever hope to make in a lifetime. And my brother, he was in a car accident last year. He needs round-the-clock care. The government won't help. Insurance barely covers anything. And I can't watch them suffer anymore. His voice cracked as he continued. I know what I'm doing isn't right. But when I found out just who Micah really was, I thought, why not make him pay? He can afford it. Just maybe he'll think twice before doing something worse. I stared at him, my emotions a whirlwind of anger, confusion, and even pity. But what about me? I whispered. You investigated me too? Elijah gave a small, sad smile. At first, yeah. But then, I stopped. After meeting you, I got sloppy. I didn't protect myself this time. I couldn't. I turned to leave, the door already halfway open, but Elijah's voice thundered behind me, freezing me in place. Do you remember me asking you if you do anything bad for the greater good? He shouted. Desperation laced his tone. I paused, gripping the door frame tightly. I do, I said without turning around. But you could have told me the truth back then. You could have trusted me. Elijah sighed. I was going to tell you, I swear. I just wanted to wait for the right moment. I didn't want you to hate me. I spun around. Well, congratulations, I snapped bitterly. You've disappointed me more than I thought possible. I trusted you, Elijah. And now I have to deal with this mess alone. I didn't wait for his response. I stormed out of the room as I made my way back to mine, when I threw open the door and found Micah sitting on the bed, phone in hand, laughing loudly. Yeah, he said, into the receiver, his tone smug. We're going to make the criminal pay. This guy has no idea who he's messing with. My blood boiled. I marched up to him and snatched the phone out of his hands. What the hell have you been doing, Micah? I screamed, my voice shaking with fury. Micah blinked at me, startled for a split second, before recovering with a smirk. Wow, you're like a ping-pong ball, meddling in everyone's business. His dismissiveness only fueled my anger. How can you sit here laughing about this? I just found out what Elijah was trying to expose about you. Illegal activities, black market deals. You've been lying to me this whole time? Micah leaned back on his bed, arms crossed. Oh, so you know. Great. Saves me the trouble of explaining. Look, I won't apologize for it. This business, it makes a lot of money, more than you can imagine. So yeah, I'm not stopping anytime soon. I stared at him, my chest tightening. This isn't the Micah I knew. You've changed, and not for the better. Is this why you didn't call the police? The second you knew Elijah was blackmailing you, because you knew you were just as guilty. Micah's smirk faltered. Wow. Look at you, Sherlock Holmes over here. Yeah, I didn't call the cops, because I've got my own skeletons. So what? I'm still here, and I'm still winning. His words made my stomach churn. Winning? I shouted. You think this is you winning? You're destroying yourself. The argument escalated, the two of us shouting over each other, until words stopped mattering. Without another word, I grabbed my suitcase and started throwing my belongings into it. Micah stood off to the side, watching silently now, his smug demeanor gone. When I finally zipped the bag, I turned to him one last time. "I don't even recognize you anymore," I said, my voice cracking. "Goodbye, Micah." I stormed out of the room, dragging my suitcase through the halls of the hotel. Outside under the cold night sky, I dropped onto a bench, my chest heaving as sobs overtook me, tears streaming freely. In a single night, I lost the man I liked and my best friend, leaving a gaping hole in my heart that I wasn't sure I'd be able to fill. After some time, I noticed a familiar scent as someone sat beside me. I didn't have to look to know who it was. "I'm going to report myself," Elijah said quietly. His voice carried a weight that made my chest ache, and everyone else involved. "The thought of me hurting you, it's made me open my moral compass a little more." He sighed deeply, his breath clouding in the cold air. "I'll probably end up working odd jobs when I get out of prison, but it's better than this." "No," I said firmly to face him. "You can do better than that. You don't have to ruin yourself completely. Return the money you didn't spend. Quit this job of extorting people, and make a difference. Fix the damages you've caused. Micah needs to be reported, but you can also right your wrongs. It's not too late." Elijah nodded slowly, his expression pained. "If I do the right thing," he asked hesitantly, "is there a chance for us?" I hesitated, my emotions swirling in a confusion storm. "Maybe," I said softly, almost unsure of my own answer. "We'll see." Elijah gave a faint smile, one that didn't quite reach his ear. "Fair enough," he said. That night he gave me a spare room to stay in. I couldn't face Micah anymore, not after everything I'd learned. The walls of the resort felt suffocating now, but I wasn't ready to leave just yet. True to his word, Elijah returned the money he hadn't used, every cent of it. He also followed through with his promise, but also reported himself along with the wealthy individuals he had targeted. It was a bittersweet conclusion, one that felt both necessary and heartbreaking. On my last day at the resort, I stood outside the crisp air, watching as the police cars took both Elijah and Micah away. My heart felt like it had been torn in two. I couldn't stop myself. I ran to Elijah, grabbing him tightly before he stepped into the car. "I'll wait for you," I whispered, my voice trembling. He didn't respond, just nodded solemnly as they led him away. As the cars drove off, I stood alone in the snow, watching the tracks disappear into the distance. The resort was quieter now, emptier, yet full of memories I couldn't escape. This was the end of something, and maybe the beginning of something else. 1 year later, it was the beginning of spring, and the snow had melted. Tulips were blooming, and I was in front of my house, hands buried in the soil, lost in my gardening. Suddenly, an unfamiliar car pulled outside my driveway. Confused, since I wasn't expecting anyone, I brushed off my hands to see who it was. The driver's door opened, radiating his usual charm, holding a bouquet of tulips in his hand. "Surprise!" he called out, flashing a crooked grin. They released me early. For a moment, I was frozen, shocked, disbelieving, and then overwhelmingly happy. I ran to him, throwing my arms around him, long and deep, as if we were making up for all the lost time. "Prison did you a favor," I teased breathlessly, running my hands over his arms. "You've got even more muscle. And you stayed perfect, just the way you are," Elijah murmured, brushing a strand of hair from my face. I chuckled. "How did you find me?" He smirked. "You sent me your address from the letters, silly. Are you going to make me stand out here, or are you inviting me in?" Without missing a beat, I wrapped my arms around his neck and whispered, "Careful, Elijah. If you come in, I might never let you leave." Conclusion. This was the most unforgettable vacation of my life. I learned how to ski, met Elijah, the man I fell for, and was betrayed by my best friend. Elijah took a plea deal, serving a short sentence, and lost his jobs as a ski instructor. While he was locked up, I helped him finance his mother and brother's medical treatment, and now they're both doing much better. He stayed in contact for a full year while he was in prison. Seeing him in my driveway that day was the happiest I'd felt in a long time. Upon release, his story of hacking skills caught the attention of tech companies, and he quickly found new opportunities in cybersecurity through the distance and challenges. I agreed to be his boyfriend. And now we're planning to move closer to take our relationship to the next level. As for Micah, though the pain lingered for a while, I hadn't spoke to him since the night. I can't support someone who sacrifices integrity for money. While my vacation wasn't perfect, it became the most meaningful experience of my life. It taught me patience, how to face my fears, and sometimes the most unexpected journeys lead to the greatest lessons. The end. Would you do something bad for the greater good? Thank you for watching. Consider subscribing to become a part of our Rainbow Force. And stay wholesome.